Thank you for the stage. So I really ask you to expand your imagination right now and follow me on one of the earliest migratory dreams of humanity and one of the earliest shared dreams of humanity, namely the dream or the fancy of flying to the moon, our satellite planet only 3.5 days away from Earth. And as I said, it's truly one of these ideas that started very early as a future vision. What about the moon? The moon actually connects us very closely to the Earth because it was created from the Earth. About 4.5 million years ago, a huge meteorite hit the very young Earth at the time, only 30 million years old. And from the debris that went out into space, a new satellite accumulated, and that's the moon. So we can understand the early history of the Earth by looking at the moon. Naturally, the moon plays a big role in all cultures. The Greeks were the first to kind of estimate the distance, and Lucian, a Syrian Roman writer and satiric, he wrote actually the first piece of science fiction, a story about 50 athletes who were taken to the moon and back. But the first astronaut in the history that we know of was a Chinese mandarin who was obsessed with the idea of flying to the moon and who built a stage with 47 rockets, lit the rockets, there was a big explosion, and Van Hu was gone. But he's still claimed as the first astronaut. On the very far side of the moon, there's a crater named after him. Kind of around the same time on planet Earth, we discovered a lot of new worlds on our own world. Terra Novas, Terra Incognitas, Columbus discovered the Americas. Naturally, not everyone who goes to look for India finds a new continent. However, there was an idea of exploration already around. Roughly 100 years later, there was a big game changer. Galileo Galilei invented the telescope and gave us the means to actually take a look at the moon, at our satellite planet. And he started to draw the moon, which kind of launched an avalanche of fictional pieces all about flying to the moon. We jump another 2 centuries and another thing happens where suddenly technology changes our understanding. The Montgolfier brothers created the first hot air balloon, and it's the first time that man ascended above Earth, the first top-down view that we had of Earth. And this gave fiction another tool to experiment about how to go to the moon, Edgar Allan Poe, we saw before. However, the biggest influence and the first time that we come close to the idea of a rocket, maybe more of a bullet, is Jules Verne. And he is the one who influenced basically all of rocket science to come. So again, we see fiction, pure fiction that inspired science. And here, the Russian Tsiolkovsky is basically hailed as the granddad of rocket science. He was sitting in a small hut 200 kilometers away from Moscow and was thinking about interplanetary travel. And he said that the Earth is humanity's cradle, but you can't live in the cradle forever. So he started to really conceptualize it. And then in the following years, in the 1920s, 30s, there was quite a rocket craze all over the world, in particular in Germany, where a lot of tests were done, and then we enter in a very ambiguous phase where one of the leading figures, Werner von Braun, who was 20 in the beginning, then 30 during the Nazi regime, used the Nazi power to build the huge V2 rockets. These V2 rockets eventually were used as weapons of mass destruction, but were the same rockets that took us to the moon. Have to speed up. The space race starts, 50s and 60s. It became a political tool. JFK said, we choose to go to the moon. He said it within a decade. So suddenly, the United States were forced to see, well, we have to do it, and they created Apollo. In 1968, before we landed on the moon, this picture was taken, Earthrise, and this is actually the beginning of the environmental movement. It's the first time that humanity saw its own planet as quite a fragile blue marble out there in space. This is the starting point of really understanding our planet as a thing to keep and to take care of. Shortly after, 1969, you know, Apollo 11, we had it mentioned before, was launched. We went out of space. Huge, huge rocket, 110 meters in height, about 10 or 12 meters in diameter. And here we are now on the moon. We suddenly made the dream a reality. Mankind are actually walking on the moon, eventually with vehicles on the moon. A number of Apollo missions went to the moon, and until eventually it was of no more interest. There were so many crises in the world. We were in the midst of the Vietnam War that this was not taken any serious anymore. What we see here is a picture from 1977, the year that I was born. This is the first picture from the Voyager, where we see both the moon and the Earth together in one shot. The Voyager is, since I think now 39 years, basically traveling into deep space and sending informations. And now we are actually at the last slide. This is Foster and Partners and their current plans of creating lunar habitats by printing from the lunar foil the houses on the moon. So the old dream is reawakened. But why am I telling all this? Basically, it's not about the moon, but it's about the power of imagination, or how a dream really can become a reality, or how speculation and fiction can become the testing ground for ideas in reality. Thank you very much.